Hey everybody, welcome to EduMatch. Thank you so much for joining us. So I'm super excited today because we get to chat with Eryka. Eryka, welcome to EduMatch. So glad to have you.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited for this chat.
Oh, thank you. And I'm super excited to chat with you. So awesomeness. So tell us a little bit about yourself, like your background and who or what inspired you to go into education.
Sure. So I originally wanted to be a translator because I really enjoyed learning languages, and I saw myself moving to different countries to spend a few months there teaching and learning the language at the same time. And I ended up realizing so here in Quebec, we have this thing called CEGEP, and it's kind of in between high school and university. We have a 2 to 3 year period there. And after doing that program in translation, I realized that I really I didn't want to translate cereal boxes and stuff like that and wait for years on end before getting real contracts. And I didn't want to have the student life or some kind of student life where you get a contract at 4 in the evening and you have to give it for the next day and stuff like that. So I didn't really know what I wanted to do. And honestly, it was my boyfriend at that time who told me, you know what? You're so patient, you understand people, you have this way of speaking with others and stuff like that. I think you should really look into teaching. And I went, maybe. I wanted to do that when I was a kid, so maybe. So anyway, I went into the field kind of by accident, and I realized that education had changed so much since I was in school, or at least in theory. That's the thing. But anyways, so I realized that I thought that was for me, for sure.
Got you. That's really cool. And it's funny because we have that in common. I also went through a translation program like right at the end of college. So I was thinking of doing that. But that is super cool. So what are some of your passions in education?
So while I was studying to become an educator, I really thought that doing cool projects was the most important thing, and I really wanted to have an impact on my students. I'm saying that and it sounds so cliche, but still, that was my goal. I wanted to make a difference in my students' lives, and I would say that that hasn't changed. I'm still looking for how I'm going to make a difference, except that now, to me, making a difference is helping kids and young adults find their purpose. And I realized that a lot of my students, I would say the majority of them, don't even know what they like anymore. So that has become my mission, to help them find their interests through passion-based learning and stuff like that, to be able to survive and thrive through this gig economy and all that.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's fantastic that you are implementing that PBL. I'm going to skip around a little bit because we were talking. You were doing a Twitter chat, guest moderating one week on the topic of PBL. So what's your interest in PBL, and how do you integrate it into your classroom?
Sure. So now what I'm doing with passion-based learning is pretty much the majority, if not the whole class that I'm giving. For the most part, I teach ESL, and I thought that especially with languages, I can differentiate and I can allow every student to be learning different things if I go with passion-based learning. So I kind of started doing that pretty much 100% of the time this year. And how I implement it is I really work hard to help the students find their interests. And I don't want to say passions, because sometimes when you say passions, people are intimidated and like, no, no, that's not my passion. It can't be so simple. So yeah, that's what I do. I try to get them to figure out what their interests and passions are, and then I help them figure out how that can become something and a side project for them in their lives, and help them navigate through social media at the same time to promote what they're doing, document what they're doing, and kind of build an online portfolio for themselves, especially at the high school level, so that when they get out of high school and they're looking for a job and their employer looks up their name on Google, well, they have something interesting to share and some experience to share, even though they might not have a lot of work experience and stuff like that.
That makes sense. And I love the fact that you are using PBL in an ESOL classroom and with students. And it's funny because I was chatting with an upcoming guest. So Lynn Colon, she's going to be on February the 11th, I want to say 11th or 12th. And so we've been having a lot of side conversations about how to kind of get outside the box when it comes to the ESOL classroom. So I think that that is so cool that you are that you're integrating PBL in that. And so, what other tips would you have for teachers of language learners to to think outside the box when it comes to their modes of instruction?
Well, for me, passion-based learning has allowed me to go get different, um, to reach out to students at different levels. It's really challenging to keep tabs on what everyone is doing and to be able to adapt and help them work through this, because one of the main problems I face is that students have never done this and don't know how to do something, not because they're told, but because it's interesting to them, and to try different things without me saying, oh, that's a fantastic idea, or you should not do that. So that's part of the struggle. But I would say, as one of the main advice I would give is to really be patient and try again every day, because if we expect it to succeed right away, we're just doomed for failure, and for, I mean, the real failure, whereas you're not getting back up, the kind of thing that you give up and don't get back to. So being really patient, and especially in those beginning months when you have to explore with the students and show them what is possible and what's being done and stuff like that. For me, I think it took maybe a couple of months before I started seeing that the students were starting to roll with it. So a couple of months puts you like at the end of October, which is a long way since the beginning of the school year. So yeah, patience is the number one thing I would suggest, and also connecting with people who are doing something similar, because it's often really lonely, honestly.
Yeah, that was gold what you just dropped. I love like how you were talking about patience, you were talking about learning with the students, not being afraid to take those risks. And also another thing that you touched on about failure. A lot of times we hear the word failure. A friend of mine, Tammy Niels, has a similar perspective to you, that it's not truly failing until you give up. And then, you can't, that's a fail right there. But there's always, way to come back from it and to refine it and to improve it. So love it, love it, love it. So you brought up connecting as well. So you are an amazing creator of content, and you also facilitate spaces for educators to connect. So regarding your own connections, what have been your biggest wins?
So people who have listened to me before are going to find this repetitive, because I always name the same person first. But if you don't know Don Wettrick, you really, really, for all of your listeners, you have to connect with him. He's an amazing educator, entrepreneur, and he's doing a bunch of things to help students start doing their own thing, and it's really amazing. And he was my first guest on my podcast, and he was really, I would say, the main reason that got me started in the first place. I was really scared, and I thought that I didn't have anything to share, and he really made me realize, you just have to start doing something, and you'll learn from there, and it will be much less scary than you think it actually is. And at least you're going to be able to document what you're doing and produce some content that way. So for me, Don Wettrick helped me start my podcast, and he's always there on the sidelines. If I have a question or something, he's really helpful. And honestly, all of the people I had on my podcast were really, really helpful. And I mean, people on social media are really, really sweet. And if you ask a question to them and you connect with them, and you're curious about what they're doing, they're always willing to help, or I'd say most of the time. And it's really been great for me. Yesterday, actually, I connected with a guy named Gareth Rafferty on LinkedIn, and we have this challenge going on, and it's really cool. So just connecting with as many people as possible from different fields also, that was a big takeaway for me, not only in the education field, because when you step out and you look at entrepreneurs and leaders and speakers and all that, they have a whole different perspective, and they know how to find and solve different problems that we're not used to seeing in education. So that's also a huge takeaway that I had.
Absolutely. I love that, like connecting with other educators and also connecting outside of education. And Don Wettrick, yeah, I love Don. He is fantastic. So you spoke about your podcast, The Teacher's Shoes. So thank you again for having me as a guest. That was so much fun and so exciting. So tell us a little bit about your podcast. Like you told us a little bit how it came about, but what is like the topic and how do you find it?
Okay, so my idea with the podcast was to try and find as many people as possible to bring value to other educators who are trying to be innovative and do things differently in their classroom. And so, like I said, it's not only teachers. So I have teachers on, but I have students, I have leaders, and I've had speakers and entrepreneurs. And it's so amazing how much value they can bring and how much insight they can bring on different things. And I mean, sometimes we're kind of isolated in the education field, and when we just look around, we can see that the same kinds of problems are going on a little bit everywhere. And if you take a step back and you're not stuck in this box, well, you can really find different solutions and just learn with amazing people. So my idea was really to bring on different guests and share what they've been doing, share their experience, and that way we can learn from them and bring bits and pieces of everything that they're doing into the education field. And that's kind of where my idea came, to try to bring innovation into education and share that with other educators who are trying to do the same thing.
That is super cool. And the point that you made about the challenges that we face, we're usually not the only people, facing such a challenge. Like I was surprised when I first started connecting globally to find that, a lot of times we'd have conversations from people from multiple countries saying, oh yeah, well, this is how it is in my class and, this part of the world, and this is how I do it in this part. So that is definitely clutch. So huge shout out to you for that. That's amazing.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So you've also written a book. So I was excited to hear about that. So the book is in French. So we're going to go ahead and do a very first time ever EduMatch question en français. And I'm probably going to butcher it. So, but since the book is in French, so I'll ask you the question in French. Okay.
Sure.
Parlez-nous du livre, s'il vous plaît. Quel est le sujet et quelle a été votre inspiration pour l'écrire pour ce livre?
Donc, j'ai commencé à écrire le livre quand j'étais dans ma deuxième année sortie de l'université, donc ma deuxième année d'enseignement. Puis, dans le fond, ça a comme été une réponse à une détresse. Quand j'étais dans ma deuxième année, j'étais totalement perdue, puis je me demandais comment ça, j'étais perdue à ce point-là, puis je savais pas qu'est-ce que je faisais, je savais pas où je m'en allais. Dans le fond, je pense qu'il y avait vraiment trop un gros clash entre qu'est-ce que j'avais vu à l'université, tu sais, quand je disais que le monde de l'éducation avait tant changé. Puis là, je suis arrivée sur le marché du travail, puis je me suis rendu compte, OK, non, c'est pas la même chose que j'ai appris à l'université, donc je savais pas trop comment naviguer ça. Fait que j'ai dit, plutôt que d'abandonner la profession, je vais écrire un livre, puis dans le fond, documenter ce que je fais, puis ce que je vais faire pour essayer de m'en sortir. Donc, au fond, le livre, c'est vraiment celui que j'aurais aimé avoir à la sortie de l'université pour me donner une piste, pour me dire par où commencer, puis qu'est-ce qui est normal, qu'est-ce qui n'est pas normal, est-ce que c'est correct que je me sente comme ça et tout. Puis, fait que j'ai écrit le livre que je voulais avoir. Puis, en gros, pour moi, c'était d'offrir une transition aux enseignants entre être sur les bancs d'école puis devenir enseignant à temps plein où on a toute la charge puis toutes les responsabilités. C'était comme un guide pratique puis un journal en même temps de ce que j'ai vécu puis de ce que je voulais transmettre aux autres.
Ah, ça, c'est très intéressant. Oui, moi aussi. Ça aurait m'aidait beaucoup quand j'ai commencé parce que j'étais aussi très perdue. Alors, that is great. So the book is all about the challenges and how you overcame them in the book and what college did not prepare you for and what you
Exactly.
encountered.
I
Yeah.
try to offer some kind of a transition for people because when we're in university, we have this perspective and we think things are going to go a certain way and it's going to be amazing, and then we step in the classroom and it's chaos. So I wanted to offer some kind of a transition, a book that you could easily refer to and just read what someone else lived. And I really wanted to write that as a second-year teacher because I knew that as time would go by, I would forget that and I would lose the specifics of what happened and why I felt that way and all that. Even now I'm in my sixth, 7th year teaching, and my perspective has changed a lot. I remember what happened, but I wouldn't be able to write that book now. So I wanted to write it then, really have 2 feet in it and to share what I was living. And yeah, so that was the idea.
C'est magnifique. Yeah, that's fantastic. So I can't wait to see that book. So how can we read it? I know that you said that it's being translated currently.
Well, actually, I translated it and I'm working on editing it and all that. So I'm going backwards, doing my translation myself. But yeah, so I'm not sure exactly when it's going to be published, but I'm going to self-publish it probably. So if I want you to hold me accountable to it, I would say September would be a good time. September would be a good time to release it. So I woke up super early this morning to be able to edit a little bit. So I'll be working on that. But for any listeners who speak French and would be willing to read it in French, they could go on leslibraires.ca. And they could find it there. They could find the bookstore closest to them, but I'm not sure how it works if you're in the States. But yeah, I'd be glad to share that information. If it's not working, I could surely work with my publisher to find a way to get it to you. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to releasing it in English as well, because I think anyone beginning their career in teaching will find value in it for sure.
Yeah, absolutely, and I'm sure the folks who have been in for a while as well too can also gain some knowledge through your experience. So that is really cool, really cool. So what
Thank
are
you.
some? Yeah, absolutely. So what are some other things that we can look out for you in the near future?
Okay, so I'm thinking about starting something for teenagers, so let's say Gen Z, to try and help more people find their purpose and find what they're trying to do, and also give them some tools and work with them so that they can start doing their own thing and start doing side projects. So I don't know exactly how or when this is going to happen, but it's been something I've been thinking about. So that's one of the things I want to work on, and I want to write more, so that should be coming too. And I also want to do more public speaking, so I'll keep you all posted for that for sure.
That is awesome. Cannot wait to see and to hear all of these great things that you're continuing to do. So awesomeness. So if our listeners or our viewers want to get in touch with you online, where can they find you?
Okay, so on Twitter, I'm at Desrosiers Eryka, and I'm going to spell that out. It's DESROSIERS, and Eryka is ERYKA. So that's on Twitter. On LinkedIn, I'm at Eryka Desrosiers, so same spelling, but the names in reverse. And I'd say those are the platforms I'm most active on. And if you want to follow my Facebook authors page, I also post my interviews there for the podcast. So I'm at Eryka Desrosiers on Facebook as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking the time out, Eryka. It was great to chat with you, and really looking forward to continuing to follow your journey and your podcast and all of the great things that you have coming. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much for having me. And this conversation was awesome, super interesting. And I'd love to speak with any one of your listeners who want to reach out. Please reach out and we can get this conversation going and keep it rolling further for sure.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That is wonderful. So thank you again. And thank you to everyone who is tuning in either now or in the future. Oh, and wait a minute. Before we close out, then we do have a question from Kathy. So Kathy, hey, Kathy, thanks so much for joining us. So Kathy is an amazing educator. She also teaches ESOL. She was asking if you could give a specific example of PBL in your class.
Sure. So, hi, Kathy. I'm happy you have this question and I'd be glad to answer it. So, one of the projects that I found really interesting that one of my students did was that they found that students at school didn't have very good manners and behavior and all that. So they decided, so two girls together decided to kind of teach others in the school how they should behave and why it's important and all that. And they've been doing some posters and they've been trying to get that rolling that way with so they did posters and they were distributing some little leaflets and stuff like that. And that's what they decided to do. But I found it really interesting that they were able to like see that problem and act upon it. And that way, being ESL, well, I was able to get like a written component in that, and whenever we were speaking together and they were finding other ideas and stuff, there was an oral component. So it's pretty easy to evaluate. The hardest part is when you have all these students at the same time and they're at different points in their projects and all that. But that's a project that I found really interesting, and those were 8th graders, so that was pretty awesome for them. And another project that was done by older students, so 11th graders, but they were struggling students in English, and they thought that people in old people's homes, they're often very lonely and they don't have anyone during the holidays and all that. So they decided to make Christmas cards for them to distribute and all that. So they worked in art and they worked in class as well on that, and they got that all organized. And yeah, that was one of the projects they did, which was a little shorter, but was really sweet as well. Yeah.
Yeah, that is so sweet, and just shows the spirit of our young folks. They're definitely out there to be positive and to impact their communities in a positive way. So thank you, Kathy, for your question, and thank you so much, Eryka, for answering it. That was great.
My pleasure. Thanks so much for having me, and I'd be glad to answer anything else or share more stories if you have any more questions for your listeners.
Okay, awesome. So you all know where to find her. So if you have questions, then connect with Eryka and, keep the awesome conversations going. So just wanted to thank everybody for tuning in either now or in the future. This will be available also on Facebook as well as a podcast within the coming weeks. And today is currently February 3rd. So at 6 p.m. Eastern, we're going to be doing a tweet and talk on National CTE Month, moderated by Maggie J. Cox. So definitely come back. Same bad time, same bad channel. Different bad time, same bad channel. Podcast with an s.edumatch.org/tweet talk. So everybody have a great rest of your day/afternoon. All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye. Thank you so much.
Thank you.